All right, welcome back, everyone. We're going to do a deep dive today on something called the Cobra Effect.
Ooh.
Have you ever heard of this?
I have, yeah.
It's a pretty interesting concept,
Crap.
and I think it has a lot of implications for how we think about problem solving
I agree.
and really just about how the world works sometimes, So for those who aren't familiar with the Cobra Effect, it's basically this idea that sometimes when you try to solve a problem,
Right.
your solution can actually backfire and make the problem worse.
It can make it much worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the name comes from this story, I think it was in like colonial India, where the British government was trying to deal with like cobra infestation, right? They had way too many cobras.
They did.
And they were like, okay, how do we get rid of these cobras?
Yeah.
And so their solution was to offer a bounty for every dead cobra that people brought in.
Oh.
Sounds good in theory. Right?
Sounds good, yeah.
Like, oh, we'll pay people to kill cobras. Problem solved.
Yeah.
But not so fast.
Nope.
Because what people started doing was breeding cobras.
Of course.
Just so they could kill them and collect the bounty.
Exactly.
So they ended up with even more cobras than they started with.
Yeah. It's like they were thinking like a two-dimensional chess game, but life is like 4D chess.
Yeah, exactly.
You were not thinking far ahead enough.
Yeah, it's like they only saw like 1 or 2 steps ahead.
Yeah, yeah.
And they didn't think about, well, what are the possible unintended consequences of this policy?
Right. And when you look at it that way, the unintended consequences in that case were totally predictable.
Totally.
If you incentivize something,
Right.
people are going to do that thing.
Right.
More of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah, the Cobra Effect, it's really about these unintended consequences and how they can just totally derail the best intentions.
And I think what's interesting is that, this Cobra Effect, it's not just some historical anecdote.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
Like, it's not just about cobras in colonial India.
Right.
We see examples of this all the time.
All the time.
Even today, in all sorts of different areas.
Yeah.
Like, I was reading about this example in Hanoi, Vietnam.
Okay.
Where they had a similar problem with rats.
Oh, rats. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they had a huge rat problem.
Okay.
And so they decided to implement a similar bounty system.
So a bounty on rats.
Yeah, a bounty on rat tails.
On rat tails. Interesting.
Okay. So you bring in a rat tail, you get a reward.
Okay.
And you can probably guess what happened.
Well, already guessing.
Yeah.
I think I know where this is going.
People started breeding rats and chopping off their tails.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And probably letting the rats go to breed more, so
Right, exactly.
could get more tails.
Yeah, it's like
It's almost like
it's
almost comical
yeah, it is comical.
if it weren't,
Right.
if the consequences weren't actually serious.
But yeah, I mean, it's a classic example of how, these seemingly simple solutions can have these really complex and unintended consequences.
I mean, it seems like it all boils down to incentives, right?
Yeah.
Like if you create the wrong incentives,
Yeah.
you're going to get the wrong outcomes.
Yeah. You're going to incentivize the wrong behaviors.
And I guess the challenge is, like, how do you know what the right incentives are?
That's the $1 million question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think one way to think about it is to really focus on the ultimate goal.
Okay.
Like, what are you actually trying to achieve?
Right.
And then work backward from there.
Okay.
Think about, okay, if this is the goal, what are the behaviors that we want to encourage? And what are the metrics that will actually measure progress towards that goal?
Right. Because sometimes the metrics that we use can be misleading, right?
Yes.
Like in the case of the rats, the metric was rat tails.
But that didn't actually measure the reduction of the rat population.
Yeah, it just measured the number of rat tails,
Right.
which, as we saw, could be easily manipulated.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah, I think it's really important to be mindful of the metrics that we use and to make sure that they're actually aligned with our ultimate goals.
So, in a way, it's almost like you have to think about the system as a whole, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, not just about the immediate problem that you're trying to solve,
Right.
but about how your solution might affect the system in the long run.
Yeah, it's about thinking systemically
Right.
and understanding that every action has a reaction.
Yeah, and I guess that's where the Cobra Effect comes in, right?
Exactly.
It's like this reminder that even the best intentions can have these unforeseen consequences.
Yeah, and that we need to be prepared for that.
Right.
We need to be flexible and adaptable.
Yeah, because if we're not,
Yeah.
we could end up making the problem worse.
Yeah, we could end up with more cobras, so to speak.
Right, exactly.
Or more rats.
Or more rats, yeah. So I guess the takeaway here is that whenever we're trying to solve a problem, we need to think about the Cobra Effect.
I do.
We need to think about those unintended consequences.
Yes.
And try to anticipate them as best as we can.
Yeah, and be willing to adjust our approach as needed.
Right, exactly.
The world is complex,
Yep.
and things don't always go according to plan.
So for all of you listening out there, I hope this deep dive on the Cobra Effect has given you some food for thought. Right. It's something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Not just in big policy decisions,
Right.
but also in your everyday life. You know?
Absolutely.
Like whenever you're trying to solve a problem, think about those unintended consequences. Think about the Cobra Effect.
Yeah, it's a valuable mental model to have in your toolkit.
It is, yeah.
It can really help you make better decisions.
And I think it can also just help us be more understanding of why things happen the way they do sometimes.
Absolutely.
You know? Like, sometimes things go wrong, not because people are malicious or incompetent,
right,
but because of these unintended consequences.
Yeah, because of the Cobra Effect.
Right, exactly.
So be mindful of it.
Be mindful, yeah.
But don't let it paralyze you.
Right, exactly.
Use it to make better decisions.
Yeah. And on that note, I think we're going to wrap things up for today.
Sounds good.
So thanks for joining us for another deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.